rundown. I don't know what episode it is, but we have been having a blast covering basketball so far. Boys basketball has pretty much come to a close. Girls basketball starting up with districts. It's a whole different ball game, folks. I got my glasses on today, which I usually don't have on
Ooh.
for this. So it's a whole different ball game that we're going to be into. It's me, Joe. It's Brandon, also on your screen. Man, Brandon, how's it going? It's been a blast so far. This week has been flying by. I mean, how have you been feeling?
Yeah, spring break here, the college town has certainly come and went, it feels like now. We're pretty much moving on back to school here soon, but along with your glasses, magnification times 10 coming in with this episode. So we'll get into the deep dive here, of course. But I mean, it was certainly a great end to the boys' basketball season. Obviously, we would have loved to see some of our CSAA teams move on farther to the regional rounds, but it certainly was a great season to follow along. There's a lot of great storylines and a lot of great finishes despite not getting the W in the column to end the year and continue on playing. I mean, we saw some teams play their absolute hearts out in fantastic finishes to the season. And I mean, MHSA, we talk about especially, there's teams that should win, there's teams that shouldn't be still playing, and yet again, we're seeing a lot of these upsets and these teams that might only have 10, 12 wins on the regular season. Well, they're going to be battling for a regional final and a regional championship on Thursday. So that's just the nature of March Madness, baby.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. And especially now with the seasons kind of changing. I mean, we got girls basketball coming up, but stay tuned because we're going to be covering a lot of the spring sports. I mean, I think we mentioned that in last week's episode, but might as well just mention it again. So that way people are ready for it and excited for it because the rundown is going to be continuing on for a lot of the spring sports that are going to be going on in the CSAA. So stay tuned for that. Let's get into girls brackets. Brandon, I think that's probably the next step for this episode. I mean, I'll just let you take over because, like I said, you're the stat guy, and then we'll kind of go through game by game. But which one do you want to start with, Brandon?
We can start. Let's start with the elephant in the room, especially with the logo on our screen being
I knew
one
you were going to
side
say
of
it.
a heated rivalry going down tonight in Cardinal Arena. If you're not there, I don't know what you're doing. Well, Ferris State is also in the GLIAC quarterfinal of the postseason, so you might have to split time here between the two. But
Decisions.
I know it's tough, but Big Rapids postseason basketball, it's going to be an absolute show wherever you are, whether you're at Wink Arena or if you're over at Cardinal Arena tonight in Big Rapids. But Reed City, Big Rapids, this is going to be a great basketball game, right? You saw earlier on the matchup, Big Rapids certainly looked to be a little bit more depleted. The first time these two teams played, Reed City played very, very well. Coach Belfuse had a really good game plan. They got a lot of really good looks and turned Big Rapids over. This should be a really interesting rematch. I'll be very curious now, especially the fact that we saw Big Rapids win that, or Big Rapids fall in that first one. Now they get to host a revenge match in the postseason in which they go into this game playing some of their best basketball over the last couple of weeks. I mean, you look at a lot of these games. I mean, they dominated Lakeview and Central Montcalm in the CSA crossovers, beat Tri-County, Newaygo. They had a really tight tussle at Cadillac, a team that is going to make some noise in District 2 this year. But I think it'll certainly be a fun matchup. I'm going to be very curious to see how Big Rapids' momentum will carry into this game. Reed City, a little bit of sputtering in that CSA tournament, but see how they go and respond as well and see if they can knock down their shots. Big Rapids, see if they can make a lot of plays, wins on the boards. I mean, it's going to be a really fun matchup. And of course, I mean, CUS 131 rivalry. It doesn't get any better than this.
It does. It writes the story for itself. So we're gonna try to get this episode out before that goes down. So if you're watching this, head on over there. It's an important game and it's a big one. Hart and Ludington are on the other side of that district bracket, so that's gonna be big time. Ludington beat Chip Hills to get to that spot, 62-26. So pretty solid handled victory. I think the next one, Brandon. I feel like probably Tri-County versus Ionia in District 40. That one's got a solid amount of CSA teams in there. Central Montcalm is also going to be facing Belding, but we'll focus on this TC game. I mean, what are your thoughts kind of for them going into it? I mean, they played on Monday, and they're going to try to, I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, District 40 should be interesting. Obviously, Central Montcalm, the host, they'll face the Black Knights, and Belding has been very good this year. They've put up a lot of points, so that'll be certainly something to watch. Tri-County falling to Ionia, obviously that's a tough one for the Vikings, but I think especially for how good Ionia is. I mean, you got to give them credit for what they've done this year. I'll be very curious to see how that Alma-Ionia game is. Obviously, Alma's going to be the favorite in this game. They're probably the favorite in the district, battling with Belding. Those two teams are slated to meet in the final, but I wouldn't count out Central Montcalm either, especially with home court advantage. There's a lot of positives that can come from being on your home floor. I mean, Central Montcalm, just looking at a lot of the games this year, they've been very successful at home, and they've beaten a couple tough teams as well. Ithaca was a battle earlier on this year that they won at home. A couple other big games as well that they won against Shepherd. So they've been pretty successful at home. They haven't been as over the last couple of games they've been at their home gym. But I think there's a lot of promise that I think you can really pull. Maybe that Big Rapids game hypens them up. I mean, that big win they got at Newaygo earlier last week on Monday was huge. So how do they play in with that as well? It could be very interesting. But I think especially for Coach Putnam and company, seeing what they can do as far as taking care of the basketball, making some plays, hitting some shots, could put them being in a really good, successful position. But obviously, Belding, they're an athletic team and they're really good and they play quick basketball, so they're going to have to really stay on it and control their tempo to see if they can slow this game down and see if they can win it and move on for a district championship.
Yeah, size-wise, I mean, a lot of the talk has been on, the size difference of those two schools. But I think Central Montcalm being at home is going to be able to, maybe make an upset tour. Who knows what's going to happen?
A
We'll
little
see.
bit of optimism.
Maybe they can get that district championship in front of that home crowd. We'll see. We'll move now to District 42. This one also two CSAA teams in it, Newaygo and Grant, and then Fremont. We know Fremont. They're not CSAA anymore, but still being able to see them, we know them. They're a familiar face. Newaygo fell to Sparta 40-31, so they're out of that running. But Grant got the first round bye. They're taking on Comstock Park tonight. What do you think of that matchup, Brandon?
Yes, Comstock Park, right? A school that I think the CSAA in general, and especially teams like Grant, Newaygo from that area, are very familiar with as far as a program. So I think this is kind of it's not a rivalry. Obviously, we can't compare it to M37. It's not in that conversation. But I mean, you look at some of these other, it's the closeness in location. A little bit of relevancy as far as both of the schools and their sizes. So it'll be an interesting matchup. Like comparing it to something like Reed City versus Everett, for example. Not necessarily like a bitter rivalry, but towns are close together. They play each other a lot. You kind of get that little bit of a rivalry kind of feel. That's not a true rivalry. But this one's kind of feels the same way with Comstock Park. But I think it'll be an interesting game. Grant obviously is a team that we were looking at the end of the season, like, man, they're playing some of their best basketball, and they're fun to watch. I mean, they won 14 games this year, earning the number 3 seed, I believe, in the tournament coming in. But I think it'll be very interesting to see, especially coming off that loss to Kent City. They beat Reed City, but especially going to Newaygo, a place especially I believe they played at earlier this year. Yes, and they got the win against the Lions in a little bit of a defensive slugfest. So I think they'll try to slow this game down a little bit. I think Grant will. Comstock Park is a team just based on paper. They're going to try to get out and run. They're going to try to get some points on the board. They like to play that slower tempo, though, as well. Maybe try to make this into a game of runs, as March always brings. So I think you'll see. I think you're going to see, if you had to put down a mortgage value, I think you're going to see a 40-40 or 30-30 type of score line in this game. There's no doubt about it. I don't see there a way being that we're going to see anywhere in the 50s from either of these teams, unless Grant's offense gets hot, which they very well can. So maybe that would be the case for them to win this game. But tougher Newaygo, though, as well. I mean, they had a really good year. I mean, finishing just above 500 might say, kind of an average year. But I think they made some noise, especially playing tough against some of those good teams. So you got to give credit to them. Sparta's also a really good team. And I think they're going to give Fremont a little bit more than they think they're going to be able to handle. So I think that's going to be a very interesting matchup on the other side as well.
Hey, I like that, Brandon. I like that a lot. That's it for District 2. We'll go to District 3 now, or Division 3, excuse me. Now to District 70. Excuse my mess up of wording there. But District 70, Lakeview and Morley Stanwood were in that one. Lakeview fell to Blanchard Montebello, so Morley is going to be taking on Montebello. So we'll see how that one goes. Morley obviously 17-4 in the regular season. They were a team that was, favorited to win the whole thing, and especially go far in this district tournament and probably in a regional. So Morley's got a little bit of expectations going into this, and that's always not the easiest thing to go into these district tournaments. As underdogs, usually can prevail in tournaments like these.
Yeah, the good news is for Morley Stanwood. I mean, obviously you saw Lakeview in a tussle there with Montebello. I believe that finished within under single digits. Yeah, 8 points. That score was 42-34. So I think you look at Morley Stanwood. I think this is kind of a maybe not my half court shot, maybe a little teaser, just a little, maybe no,
Just a
maybe
little
maybe a
bit.
deep, maybe a Dame Lillard 3-point shot from about 4 or 5 steps
Just a heat
outside of
check.
the arc.
Little
Yeah,
heat
just a
check.
heat check. Molly Stanwood, I think, goes into District 70 with the most pressure and expectations. And this is with Beale City being the home team, St. Louis the team with the most points, or I should say, I believe the highest MPR. I'll double check that here as I continue on. But you look at those two, you look at that matchup right there, you look at St. Louis and you look at Beale City, and you're like, man, this is the game everyone's watching. Like, Morley Stanwood is expected to beat Montebello and be in the district final. They have all of that expectations on them from their fan base and from these other schools, which, I mean, rightfully so for how good of a team they've been this year, right? So, but you look at the matchup I think when you look at Blanchard Montebello and you say, I think this is a team they should very well beat, right? 446 MPR, Blanchard Montebello has. But I think it'll be very interesting to see what that matchup would then be like against St. Louis, a team that is very good, a team that can score the basketball, they can defend very well. But Moy Stanwood, I think especially, one thing they got on their side is they have really good chemistry, and that's very apparent when you watch them play. It's not necessarily, obviously, you have a couple of really good scorers, but it doesn't have to be the same two every night. And I think that's a really big benefit for them is they're able to create shots. They're able to create offense, and that's huge for them. I mean, they're one of the highest averaging offensive girls teams that I think I've seen over the last couple of years. I've been covering a lot of these area schools. I think they would probably average somewhere rivaling some of the boys' teams earlier this year. That's how good they can score the basketball. I'm not necessarily comparing them straight up to say, but you look at the amount of scoring between these games on average as historical data. The girls obviously score a couple less points than the boys do, and it's just with the more intensity on defense. But they can show that they can score the offense, and they can score the basketball at a high level, and I think that's something that they're going to have on their side, especially when they face against St. Louis. They're going to have to score a lot, but I think that's something you can go in with confidence because they played those tough games, playing at Fremont, 69-66 game. They've proven they can win those track meets, and we probably expect them to probably be in the same against St. Louis, so we'll see if they can do it again.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. We're rooting for the Mohawks. We'll see how that one goes out. Now moving on over to District 73, hosted over there by Shelby. White Cloud could not get it done. They were the only CSAA team in that one. Struggled a little bit, 19-42. They lost. So not much to talk about there, but still able to get their season ended in the district first round. So tough looks, but that's usually just how it goes.
It is, and White Cloud, you got to give them credit. They fought all year. They just really had some struggles scoring the basketball. That was very apparent when you watch them play. And it was just the consistency of scoring the basketball that really gave them a lot of problems. Defensively, they overall they would play some pretty good games, but scoring the basketball was just really kind of the focal point of their struggles this year. And that's a hard thing to go into. Knowing the pressure of, man, we got to limit some of these teams, these really good scoring teams, to under 30 points. That's a really tall order. And you got to give them credit. They did that a couple times. Blanchard Montebello, they did that, 29-27. But you had to know going into that matchup that you're going to have to hold them pretty low. And just because your offense isn't as strong as some of these other teams where you can score 50, 60 points, like you're just talking about the Kent Cities and the Molly Stanwoods. But they gave it their all. And Shelby got the best of them. But I think this program's headed in the right direction under Coach Wilk. And we'll see what they have in store for next year. Because I think next year coming up, I think we talk about this on the boys' side, Joe, too, is we might see this race tighten up even more between these two teams. It should be exciting to watch.
Yeah, for sure. And then in District 74, Kent City got the first round bye, so they're going to be facing Ravenna, who just beat Grand Rapids Wellspring 68-14. So pretty big margin of victory. We'll see if Kent City is able to do that. I mean, they're fresh off that CSAA tournament win, so they're obviously rolling and they're feeling good. I think that's going to be a big time one, especially in their gym. When that gym gets packed, I mean, it's a pretty incredible atmosphere, especially with kind of the second level on the one side that they got. It's a tough gym to play in, and especially for Kent City, they got a lot of expectation going into this one. I think they're going to be able to back it up, in my opinion.
I like your opinion, Joe, because I agree. Kent City
Cool,
has
man. Thanks.
It really, the nest there, I mean, being there from the guys' game when they played Big Rapids this year, it has a different feel to it, and it's not necessarily to the full vibe of Reed City where it's just all on one side, then you have just absolute nothing but cinder block on the other side, it feels like. But it has that condensed feel to it. So every emotion and energy gets amplified times five getting down to the floor. And I think that's the biggest thing, and especially for a team like Kent City where they capitalize on runs, momentum, and especially, I mean, you talk about momentum, and we talked about how many games they've won in a row. It just feels like everything's going for
It's
them
a
right now.
lot.
It
It's a
really
lot.
is. Everything's going right now for this Eagle team, and especially for Coach Holcomb and that crew. They really have everything going for them. We're rooting for them because I think with this district being there, I mean, you look at the other side. Obviously, if they end up winning against Ravenna, they complete what we predict. They're gonna have a fun game against whoever they're gonna play in Muskegon WMC or Grand Rapids North Point. I mean, those are two really good basketball teams that play a lot of tough teams, so they're battle tested from that area, especially playing in the conferences they do in the WMC as well as OK. So I think it's gonna be really fun. I think it's gonna be a fun matchup for Kent City. We'll be rooting for them obviously, but I think you look at even though the other teams on the other side are battle tested, Kent City. I think you got to look at them as the favorites for how well that they've been playing over the last couple of games. We hope that they save a little bit of that fire and that momentum here for the next couple of games. Hopefully they don't use it out here in the semis before the finals. Maybe knock down a couple less shots so they can save them for the final. Maybe, obviously we have all those superstitions and whatnot. But Kent City, favorite, got to be in 74. And we see if they complete in the regional coming up.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it mainly because I mean they're just a team that has just been rolling. They're gonna be my favorites to go out of this district and then start up in Regional 19. But obviously, like we said, it's not anything guaranteed in district play, and they're gonna have to still play their best basketball. They might be on a I don't know 16, 17 game heater or whatever they're on right now. But it does not matter when you got postseason play, when you got March going on, because anything can happen. And even though you're hosting, it's never a guarantee. So we'll see how that one plays out. I think that's it for teams of the CSAA that are playing in this district tournament coming up. We've kind of gone over it. It's a little bit shorter of an episode of the rundown, so we apologize for it, but that's kind of what happens when the seasons start to dwindle down. I think it's time for the half court shots. The clock is ticking down. You got to toss a buzzer beater out. Hail Mary, you got to have one last chance to win the game, Brandon. What are your predictions going into this week?
Ooh, this one's tough. Now, I talked about the Packers last week, right? And people are probably saying, "Oh, he's going to make another Fremont prediction and once again." And it's like, hold up, I'm going against him now. I'm going to the other side. I think they go down in District 42. They're the favorite. They play Sparta. Sparta's a good team, but numbers would say, fans would say, coaches would say, analysts would say, Fremont's the favorite to get to the final. I like Grant over Fremont in that matchup. It's going to be a high-scoring game, I know, but Grant, if they can get their shots falling, they can be a dangerous team. They can defend and get turnovers, and I think with Fremont's played really well this year. You got to give them credit for what they do, but I think, just think a little bit, I see they're playing at Newaygo. It's a place they've been successful in past this season already. I think there's a really good chance that we see the Grant Tigers win a district title. You didn't hear it here first. I think there's been a couple people that might have said this already, but I'll be willing to go out there and say, you know what, Fremont's the favorite. Oh well, Grant's going to win this one. I just got the feeling about it. I think they bounce back. I think they bounce back in a big way because they play tough in some of these really close games. These one-possession games, they have shown they win these games, and that's something that I really like to see when you look at a lot of these predictions for these March Madness games and tournament play. I'm really looking forward to seeing it. I think the biggest thing for them, though, they're going to have to win it in regulation. Overtime, they've had some struggles this year. So if they can get it and keep the game to 32 minutes, I think that's their best chance. Overtime with Fremont, they're more successful in history when overtime. But I think Grant just has a good chance, and I'll put it out there that I think they can get a win against Fremont in the district championship and hoist a trophy there in Newaygo. On rival territory, by the way. That would be
I like
crazy.
that. I like that a lot, Brandon. I'm not gonna lie. I think you got to look over there for mine. For my little prediction, I'm gonna be traveling on over to District 70. This one for Morley Stanwood, I feel like it's gonna be a lot tougher than people think, but Morley Stanwood is gonna be able to win this whole thing. because you have St. Louis and Beale City. Those are two pretty solid teams. I don't think Morley Stadium's got to overlook Montebello, but they're still a team that if they play the basketball that they've been playing, I mean, it's going to be pretty solid. I believe they're 6-2 in their last 8, so they've been on a roll. They had a little bit of a hiccup in that CSAA tournament final, but that just gives them a little bit more motivation to still play very well. This is the first game since then. They had that first round bye. I think they're going to be in one of the best solid situations to really have a first good game, or excuse me, a good first game of this district tournament. St. Louis and Beale City, on the other hand, though, St. Louis is a team that's, I think 7-1 in their last 8. So it's going to be a tough one. I think that district final for District 70 is going to be one for the ages. Mohawks are going to be raising the tournament trophy, and they're going to be hopping on over. I think the regional 19 is where they're going to be going if they can win it all. But Morley Stadium's going to win it, but they got to win tonight first. But I think they're going to be able to take it all and take over in District 70. So we'll see how it plays out.
This should be exciting. We didn't have any CSAA boys teams take home district trophies. Now this might be the time for these girls teams to step it up for the conference and bring home a couple chips with them on their bus ride home. It'll be really exciting to follow. This tournament, I think, is going to be really exciting just because we have so many teams with momentum going into these last couple of games, and it really feels like there are like the hottest teams right now are some of the top teams in the CSAA, and they are all going into the semifinal and final against some of these battle-tested teams with momentum. That is a huge plus going in, and it's going to be really fun to follow.
It is. It's going to be a blast, and we can't wait to bring it to you. We'll be back next week for the next episode of the Rundown with hopefully some more stuff to talk about and hopefully with some teams in the regional tournaments. We'll see how it plays out. We'll see if our predictions are correct. Who knows? But we'll see how it goes. I think that's going to be it for this episode of the Rundown. We'll be seeing you. Brandon?
Till next time.
All right, bye.
Oh, man.